Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the pig. And the pig seems to be an absolute nightmare on the defense, so I'm sure he could potentially make towards the top of everybody's hated champion chart. But we're going to get to that in a bit. First, I'm not going to read all of his abilities or strengths or all of the developer notes because I'm sure you guys are perfectly capable and you can read that pretty much everywhere else or in any other video. Right. The main things that he has. First of all, he's science champion with reasonable prestige, nothing kind of like too outrageous. His main mechanic is spider nonsense and porker peppers, which is basically a power thing. So I'm going to refer to that ability as power thing just to make my life a bit easier. He can also taunt the opponent. Therefore, by that ability, combined with some of his other stuff, I do think there will be quite a lot of value to be had of him as an attacker as well. Maybe not your generic everyday run-of-the-mill attacker, but definitely kind of like niche situational champion that I want to have, basically. So yes, I am quite interested in this guy, and he does look quite good overall. But let's start explaining his kind of like main thing. So first, he has increased physical resistance. His main mechanic is called spider nonsense, and that basically fuels a bunch of his abilities. The thing that you need to know about spider nonsense is that it kind of just grows and increases in background the more power opponent has, provided that it is past a bar of power. Over time you will gain these spider nonsense counters. It's kind of like Phoenix gaining Furies, where you have like the Phoenix Force and then you gain Fury periodically. In this case, it's not that you want to get more Phoenix Force charges to gain Furies faster, it's the fact that you want to have opponent with more power to gain them quicker. And then you reduce degeneration potency by a lot. Basically, you reduce them by 15% per spider nonsense, and you can get up to 10. So you can reduce degen potency basically up 90%, and that's quite crazy. That can alone make him quite useful character, because that is a very, very significant degen reduction. In addition to that, he also reduces the special attack damage, and he has a synergy where you can double up on that. So in theory, you can run him up against the wall and eat all the special attacks, provided you have maxed up on the spider nonsense. And yeah, you're not gonna take any damage. So he definitely seems that he will have quite a lot of very interesting interactions, where in some crazy power gain matchups, considering that he utilizes power things that have a chance to reapply themselves, I think he could potentially cheese a lot of improved power gain nodes and stuff like that. But anyways, so spider nonsense is at 6 or more. He has a 35% chance to evade and accept while he's blocking. And now this is another very significant thing, because 35% is insanely high chance to evade, and you're gonna have to keep that in mind whilst you're facing the guy. So he's gonna be an evading machine, and there's a ton of bad things that happens when he evades, and therefore it's pretty much guaranteed that he will be a defender that you have to counter. Now, if you bring in appropriate counter, I don't think he will be too problematic, but he will require basically two things to counter. It's going to be complete evade shutdown and a champion that doesn't rely on special attacks, because it's more than likely that he will find a way how to place these porker peppers on you, especially by his awakened ability, which we're going to get to later. But the funny thing is that pretty much every single champion that's released in 2020 relies heavily on special attacks, and yeah, so he's gonna be very tricky to counter, especially with the later arrivals to the contest. Right, while spider nonsense is at 10, spider ham will not gain any for 6.5 seconds, after which it resets back to 0 or to 3 against mystic champions. But you can reduce that with heavy attack, and then you can kind of like manage it to be basically in between 8 and 10 for the rest of the fight, which is quite important. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing heavy attack does, by the way. It just removes 2 spider nonsenses, and that lets you kind of like reset that cooldown and yeah, not lose them, and so they will never disappear down to 0. So you're going to be spending most of the fight once you have ramped up in between 8 and 10 spider nonsenses. Right, medium attacks, and medium attacks is basically how he places those poppers on the opponent primarily. So 50% chance to place a porker popper on the opponent for 9 seconds, dealing a bunch of damage when they activate special attack, and it's increased by 25% flat if the opponent is stunned or you're unblockable. And that's the key thing there, because he has two different ways how to go unblockable. And number one is whenever he evades, he automatically goes unblockable. And that means, again, he's going to be very, very tricky to deal with on defense. Because typically when you are playing against evading champions, if you play very carefully, for most part, if you anticipate the evade and you're quick enough, you do have time to put up your block. Obviously, if he's unblockable and you try to block it, you're going to get smacked in the face. So you really definitely do not want this guy to evade against you ever. And that can be achieved either hitting him only while he's stunned, or using like a very solid evade prevention mechanic. However, if you hit him while he's stunned, while his awakened ability, he has a way to place poppers on you anyways. So it's going to be very tricky to balance there, and you're going to have a lot of things to keep an eye out for. But there's also a special 2, and special 2 is going to be like the big thing to worry about as well. Because this attack is unblockable if opponent is taunted, so there's another way how he can go unblockable, is if he manages to taunt you, and he has several tricky ways to taunt opponent, and one of the main things is, again, whenever he evades, you get taunted, so that's another very cheeky thing there. And set spider nonsense to 10, so you automatically go up to 10, and pause its reset timer for 7 seconds. So that is going to be primarily like one of the base rotations where you want to go for if you want to tank opponent's special attacks as well, and obviously it will kind of like likely deal quite a bit of damage. Place 3 porker peppers on opponent, each lasting 9 seconds, dealing a whole bunch of damage. It also is said in developer notes that this attack is going to be very tricky to dex, right? And considering the fact that it's going to be unblockable, you get taunted every time he evades. If you let him evade and he gets level 2, you're basically likely going to be done for. So there's going to be a lot to keep in mind whilst facing this guy. I'm going to speak more about his offensive potential a bit later on, but yeah, there are a lot of things getting stacked against player who faces this guy. So he's definitely going to be a staple Alliance War defender, and it's a bit intimidating, that ability set. I'm sure we can find good counters, but at the same time, it's going to be something to counter. It's not going to be like a generic opponent to go up against. And where did we left off? Here, evade effects. Here we go. So you can also get 100% chance to evade attack if you dash back and hold block for 12 seconds. Now, this primarily probably will have an offensive use, not really to defensive capability. It's just like so you can trigger evade offensively 100% guaranteed via this method. But other than that, I don't think it's going to have too much use, to be honest, and I don't think most people will go for it offensively either. So here we go. Whenever Spider-Ham evades, he becomes unblockable for 1.2 seconds and taunts the opponent for 7 seconds. So remember, when you're taunted, you have an attack reduced, and his special 2 is unblockable, which likely is going to be very hard to dex. And obviously the fact that he goes unblockable himself when he evades, yeah, it's going to be very tricky to deal with that evade if it does occur. And there we have an explanation of porker peppers. Basically, it's a powers thing. And it's a powers thing where every time you trigger it, it has a chance to reapply itself per spider nonsense. And I think it's, what is it, 8.5%? Yeah, 8.5% chance to reapply it per spider nonsense for vast majority of the fight whilst you're using this guy. You're going to have like 85 to 70% chance to reapply each of the porker peppers. So you can stack up a very, very good amount. And the additional point is that additional damage is increased by 60% for each power bar on the opponent they had when the ability was triggered. So you get additional 60% of damage if they shoot level 1. You get 120% damage if they drop level 2. But with his mechanics, it's also not out of the question that you push opponents to level 3 and gain 180% extra damage, because he can tank those special attacks, like opponent's attack is significantly decreased while they are taunted. you take up to 50% less damage from opponent's special attacks if you have 10 spider nonsense. In addition to that, there is a synergy that doubles that, so if you are at 10 spider nonsense, you take no damage from special attacks, or if you are at 8 spider nonsense, which also will be fairly frequent amount of time, you will take 20%, but then again there is a damage reduction from taunt, plus his increased physical resistance, so even at 8 you should be pretty much able to eat any level 3s and stuff like that. So you can deal a ton of damage with those, and that's kind of like his primary only main damage mechanic, because he doesn't really have any furies, cruelties, none of that stuff. He deals all of the significant damage via power sting, so any opponents that do not throw special attacks will not be a great matchup here in this case. And the special attacks themselves, level 1's fairly simple. It just pauses all Porker Peppers till opponent uses special attack, and after this special attack, taunt the opponent for 7 seconds. Now, when it says after this special attack, I wonder, do you have to land it? Because if you don't, then that just makes life even more difficult against the guy, because if you're fighting against the guy, if he drops level 1, you get taunted, and if he gets close to level 2, that level 2 is going to be unblockable. So I have a feeling that against this guy, it's going to be pretty much bait out level 1s exclusively, or prepare to die. Right, so level 2, we already read that one, and level 3, seemingly, it's kind of similar to Killmonger's one, where basically, if the opponent has triggered fewer than 15 Parker Poppers, you place 4 on opponent, and if your opponent has triggered 15 or more Parker Peppers in this fight, then place a Parker Pepper on them for every Parker Pepper that was triggered. This can only occur once per fight, maximum 25 of those. So you can immediately place like 25 power stings on opponent, plus you're probably going to have like 10, 5, 15, whatever active on them as is. And if opponent throws a special attack, you're going to be dealing an absolute butt ton of damage. They have a high chance of reapplying themselves, and then you just want to keep baiting on special attacks basically, and opponent is just going to go down quite rapidly. And signature ability is what ties it all in defensively. Right, signature ability is where the final trick is hidden there. Whenever Spider-Hammer waves, he places a Parker Pepper on the opponent. That's fair enough. That does make life harder. That basically shuts down your special attacks if he manages to evade. However, whenever Spider-Ham is struck while stunned, 30% chance to remove one Spider nonsense and place non-stacking Parker Popper on the opponent. So this is another way, because typically, since he is a very evade heavy centric champion, you will, with an average champion, parry him, do a couple of hits, and dash back, because he has 35% chance to evade. In perspective, he is likely to evade one of every 3 attacks thrown at him. So if you're not using very specifically dedicated evade counter, it's going to be pretty much impossible to fight him once he reaches 6 spider nonsenses. And in this manner, it also shuts down your special attacks. So that's going to be very tricky. So you're basically going to need a champion who can be very effective without using special attacks, and at the same time can't counter that evade, or you will only be able to strike him whilst he is stunned. Right? So it's quite tricky set of conditions there quite immediately. And then if you put all of the other nodes on top of him, it's going to be quite dicey matchup. These Parker Peppers last 14 seconds, blah blah blah, deal 924, that is slightly less damage. While Spider Nonsense is at 10, it lasts for additional 2 seconds, so that's kind of helpful offensively. Right. But yeah, he definitely seems quite tricky defender in his base kit, for sure, without a doubt. I actually want to see his tags. Did I miss them? I don't think they listed his tags. But I want to know if he's going to be stubborn defender as well, because stubborn is obviously dominating Alliance with defense right now, and with all those things combined, it could be quite tricky. Right, anyways, let's go with synergy bonuses. I don't want to keep you guys too long. He has a couple of interesting ones, but obviously you're not going to bring in Miles, so you're rarely going to use this one. However, Spider Nonsense resets to +3 more than it would normally, and again, your goal is not to let them reset ever anyways. So you can accomplish that either by spamming level 2s and dropping a heavy attack somewhere in between all of that. So I don't think this is going to be overly useful, and I don't think it gives quite enough to Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now we have Saturday morning cartoons with Mojo. Spider-Ham, whenever an opponent's special attack triggers at least 10 Parker Peppers, the special attack damage reduction from Spider Nonsense is 100% stronger. And this is a synergy that lets him eat special attacks without taking any damage. So it definitely does seem quite alluring. There will be some testing involved for sure. I will try my hardest to get this champion. And yeah, it could have some potentially unique offensive uses where, for instance, instead of using Dr. Octopus on like improved power gain nodes, you just kind of let it rip and you let opponents spam those special attacks and you eat the level 3s because you're going to be taking hardly or now no damage at all whatsoever from those specials. And they're going to be killing themselves, and they're going to be gaining tons of power, and they're going to be killing themselves. So it will be quite interesting. Definitely look forward to seeing how viable it is, but on paper there are some definite unique uses, which I kind of like. And now what else we have? Mojo, it's nothing too big there. We have with Sinister 6 with Spider-Gwen. Spider-Ham, while fighting Sinister 6 or Symbiote champions, the damage from Parker Pepper debuffs gains additional extra. It's kind of like whatever. And Spider-Gwen, this is very good for Spider-Gwen when you start the fight in both Trap Spider and Hunter Spider modes. However, Sinister 6 and Symbiote champions, it's quite fairly specific, so I don't think it's going to be like used too often. Perhaps in Alliance War, actually, it could turn Spider-Gwen into an quite insane attacker against Symbiote and Sinister 6 champions. But the problem is there aren't too many crazily annoying defenders that are Sinister 6. But since you start in Trap and Hunter Spider mode, you can underweight them quite reliably, and you could have a chance to finish a fight without opponent reaching a bar of power, which could be extremely useful. But again, it's just shame it only works against those subsets of champions. If it would be at least like a full class or something, then we could talk. Now, fourth of Wall Crawler with Gwenpool, Goldpool, Platinum Pool, and Squirrel Girl. Parker's pepper durations increased by 20%. I think it's kind of neat, nice, but I don't think it's going to be the most important thing. Gwenpool, Vigilance while the opponent's bleeding, making attacks unable to miss. That's neat. It's good, I suppose. Unfortunately, it doesn't obviously work against Guillotine 2099 because she can't be bled. And some other champions, but could help against Invisible Woman, Ebony Maw, possibly. Now how Gold Pull, Platinum Pull, gain an indefinite Fury buff up to 10 times for 10%. Nice 100% attack increase eventually. So that's not too bad. And Squirrel Girl basically gets blades parries. So he plays bleed when you parry. And other than that, that's about it. Despair is recommended there. So I do think he could potentially have very interesting offensive uses, but the clear accent I think is on his defensive capabilities, and we're gonna have to see how he works. He has potential of dealing some stupidly crazy damage, especially in matchups where opponents spam special attacks, and he could be a very good degen counter, and that means Dormammu's and Mojos and stuff like that, and that would also, well, yeah, basically he goes up 90% immune against those, and he's also a science champion, so he would have class advantage. So he seems interesting, but obviously currently the big fear, the big worry is how tricky he's going to be on defense. Because if you're going to hit him while he's stunned, you get power stun, so you can say goodbye to your special attacks. If you don't hit him while he's stunned, he has very high chance to evade. So you're going to have to find a champion. Well, Venom is going to be great for him, or you're going to have, I don't know, Ghost probably, and just not throw special attacks or Quake him, but yeah. So there definitely will be limited options in countering this guy. And when you put on extra nodes and extra hurdles, I'm quite fearful. This is a one scary little pig. But that is about it. I already stretched out this video quite long, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all